Hi everyone, Jesse here with etrailer. Today we'll be taking a look at and I'll show you how to install the CURT RVi Shadow 2 flat toe braking system on our 2025 Jeep Wrangler. There's 5 main components to look into when setting up your vehicle to be flat toed. We'll have the base plate, the tow bar, the braking system, our diode wiring, and the safety cables. The braking system is absolutely essential when you're setting up your vehicle to be flat toed. It's going to keep you safe and legal in all 50 states. And of course, you bought your motorhome to travel across states, so you might as well have the braking system there when you'll need it. What it does is allows you to not only rely on the motorhome's brakes, but also use the towed vehicle's brakes to come to a safe stop. This braking system is proportional, which means the harder you're applying the brakes on the motorhome, the harder the brakes on your towed vehicle will be applied. It accomplishes that by having an inertia sensor inside of one of the components, and that's going to be hands down the best sort of braking system that you can have. It just seems to be the most responsive and also the smoothest and most comfortable. One really neat feature about this braking system that really sets it apart from some of the other options out there in my mind is it has a built-in towed vehicle battery charger. So what that's there for is it's going to continuously put a safe charge on your towed vehicle's battery. That way, when you show up to the campsite, you don't have to worry about the battery being dead, having to find a jump pack or another car to get it jump started. It's just going to always have a charge to it. It's also really nice because maybe you are just expecting your battery to be dead, and that means every time you got to stop somewhere to get gas, you're going over to your towed vehicle, starting up the engine. That takes a lot of time out of the trip when you would rather be headed to your campsite and getting nice and relaxed. Another nice feature that some of the other flat toe braking systems don't have is this wireless monitor. This is called the CURT Bullseye wireless monitor, and it's just really easy to use. You have a nice clear picture, you can put it anywhere, and what this does is it will tell you when everything's functioning properly. You can adjust the braking power and all of that, and you can also have this screen up when you're driving around. And what this is for is whenever you hit this, that's going to apply the brakes on the towed vehicle, which is really nice to have if you've ever had any kind of sway condition while you're driving down the highway. This will make it go away better than any other technique that I know of. It's just a nice thing to have for that comfort when you're on the road. We'll pull this thing inside and take a closer look at all of the individual components that are involved in this braking system. So the Shadow 2 is comprised of a few different components. We'll start with the Shadow box. This is really the brains of the operation here. There's actually an inertia sensor inside of this that will sense when you're coming to a stop and knows when to apply the brakes. It also sends all of the signals and everything electrical. And then there's our booster box. This is really where it gets all of the power to pull the pedal. You'll have to connect this to your vacuum on your vehicle, and then it connects to our cylinder. The cylinder is what actually pulls the brake pedal on the towed vehicle to allow it to come to a stop. You'll have to drill a hole through the firewall. That's its anchor point, and then it will tie onto a bracket that attaches to the pedal and pulls that pedal. And here's a look at that bracket. As you can see, it's pretty simple. There's just 2 bolts that go around it and hold it in, and then your cable will be anchored down here. If you have any more questions or concerns about the RVi Shadow braking system, please feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to get you sorted out and get you pointed in the right direction. But now that we've seen everything and I've talked about it, we'll get to the installation process. I'll walk you through it. If it's not something that you're comfortable with doing yourself, check out our dealer locator. You can find someone local to you that will be happy to get this set up for you. But otherwise, let's get to the installation process and I'll show you how it's done. To begin our installation, I like to kind of plan out where we're going to end up mounting everything. We're pretty limited on space in our engine bay here, but with our Shadow box, it can go just about anywhere in any orientation. I found a nice little slot here. If you carefully pull back on your ABS pump, it'll kind of lock it into place. I will still add on some zip ties, but really we just need a location where we can reach our wiring to where we mounted our Shadow box over there, which I'll show you right now. In the Shadow box, I like to mount this close to the battery because that's where we're most limited on our cable length. And what I did was I just applied some hook and loop fasteners to the top of our fuse box here, and that's going to help that stay attached. And the only thing you need to pay attention to with mounting the shadow box is, like the booster box, it can go just about anywhere, but there's 2 arrows on it. Those need to be facing towards the front. Next, we need to drill our hole through our firewall for our cable to anchor down to. So what I do is just depress the brake pedal while you have a paint marker, and you can kind of mark it like that. We want a straight line from behind the brake pedal. I've already marked it and punched it. Then we'll take a 5/16 inch drill bit and drill it through. Before you start drilling, you do want to just kind of double check the other side, make sure that there's nothing on that side that you could damage, and we'll figure out a way to get our drill bit tucked behind our brake pedal and start drilling that hole. So after doing my marking and drilling out a couple of very small holes, I was finding that I kept ending up kind of sandwiched between 2 pieces of metal, and if I installed our anchor point there, it would be at an angle, and that's something that we don't want. But I did notice that there was a stud right here where the floor mat kind of clips in. So what I did was I put some vice grips on the stud, wiggled it, and eventually it came out. Just be very careful. You don't want to stretch the hole out any more than you have to. And it actually ended up being about the perfect size hole. I just wallered it out a little bit with a 5/16, and then from the outside I just pushed our anchor point through. I think it's going to be really nice. It's going to line up with this hole. Our wire's just going to kind of come through that hole, and it's going to look really clean. But once you get your anchor point through, you'll just want to slide on your star washer on the cable. With the star washer on, we can top that off with our nut. I'll get that hand tightened as good as I can, and then I'll tighten it down with a 1/2 inch wrench. Now we need to get our pedal bracket installed onto our pedal arm. We just want to make sure that our anchor point, which is this hole here, is nearest the firewall, and with where I drilled my hole, it's going to be on the left side. I just undid the hardware on one side just to make it easier to slip over our pedal arm. I'll slide the other bolt on and get that nut installed on that one. And before we tighten it down, we'll want to get our cable situated, try to get it as straight as possible. So what we'll do is just back off that set screw on the outside there, slide our cable through the hole, and kind of get it situated where it's going to be a nice straight line coming out of the firewall, and then we'll tighten it down just by alternating side to side with a 5/32 Allen wrench. And once you have the bracket tightened down, you'll want to set your tension on your cable here. So you just want to pull it until there's a little bit of slack, because we don't want the brake pedal dragging at all times. And once you have that set, do a double loop around the hole here and tighten down your set screw. Now with our cylinder, this can be mounted just about anywhere. They recommend you just use zip ties to hold it down, but what we want to do is get some of the slack out and make sure that we're not kinking this cable at all. So I'm just gonna trying to figure out a nice route, which this should be fine. People can still get in here, access the coolant reservoir and the washer fluid, and then I'll zip tie any loose pieces that I find, and also I'll zip tie the cylinder itself down right here to some of this wiring. Now with our cylinder mounted over there, we can connect our air line that runs from our booster box here to that cylinder. So on this connection, we'll just simply push it in. You'll kind of feel it click into place. Give it a tug, make sure it's nice and tight. And we'll bring it over to our cylinder here. We are going to have a bit of slack, so I'll take some hose cutters, snip it there. Make sure you have a nice straight cut. And then once again, I'll actually angle this down a little bit. Once again, we'll just push that in until it clicks. That means it's nice and secure. If you were to have a leak or something like that down the road, to repair your line, you just simply push in on this cowler here, and that'll release your hose. And when it comes to mounting our breakaway switch, it really depends on your base plate and your bumper setup. I just made my own bracket and self-tapped it into our bumper here. That's going to hold it on nice and tight. And then with the wiring that comes off the back of that, I just routed it up behind our bumper. I had to use a piece of airline tubing to kind of feed it up through here. And I brought it up to where our actual shadow box is. And you'll see this plug in on the back here. We'll just take that and plug it in. Next, we need to tie our booster box into the vacuum from our engine. So I use these hard lines here. I just cut back a piece and then used about 2 inches of the rubber hose in our kit to connect our T in. I did end up cutting off just a little bit of this just to make more space there. And from that T, we have a hose going into our booster box. And you'll also have to tie in a check valve down in here. So I just cut our hard lines, use that same method, cutting the 2 inches of the hose. And then our check valve, you want to make sure that the skinnier side is facing towards the engine. In your kit, you'll have another plug with 2 wires coming off of it. These are our towed battery charger wires. So I just plugged the one in into our box up there and routed our 2 wires just like I did with the breakaway switch plug through down to our 6 pole. And then with these wires, the red one will most likely go to your center post here. If you're not sure that it's the correct one, you'll just want to hook up to your motorhome and check your voltage. You'll have 13 volts there. And then the black wire is the ground. So what I did was I just twisted it around our diode wiring ground and clamped that into place. And to make these connections, you just simply back out that Phillips screw, push the wires in, and then tighten it down. Now we'll just have to connect our shadow box and our booster box together. And that cable is quite long, so just make sure you kind of find a place to tie up the slack and bring it around, just staying away from anything that's hot or moving, and then simply plug it into the back of our shadow box here. Then we have one more connection to make, and that's the actual connection for our power from our towed vehicle's battery. So those are the hardwired wires coming off the back of the shadow box. You'll have one that starts red, has a fuse holder in it. Make sure you remove that fuse before you make the connection. And then you have another one that is black. That's our ground. And I actually used a factory ground down here just because that's where I was tying in our diode wiring. You could also just connect this to the ground on your battery. But once you made that connection, we have everything basically set up. We can install our fuse. Just push it in. And then we're looking for a green light and then a flashing blue. That flashing blue just means that our battery is ready to go. Now with everything connected, we'll test and make sure everything looks right and is going to be good before we hit the road. So I'll pull our breakaway switch. I can already hear the compressor kicking in, so we'll take a look at the pedal, make sure everything's going nice and straight. Now we can set up our bullseye. So we're in our motorhome now. I'll take the included 12-volt outlet, get that plugged in, and plug in the USB-C on the bottom. It should boot up almost immediately. And then it's going to bring you to a pairing screen. So now we'll have to go to our towed vehicle and we'll have to unplug our breakaway switch. Now we just popped our hood and we'll go to the back of our shadow box. And that last plug is of course our breakaway switch. We'll unplug that and that's going to put it into pairing mode. Now we can look at our screen here. We'll see that our device is listed here. There will be a number on your shadow box if you just wanted to double check or if you had multiple. But click on that. Right there, it gives us a nice little You're a Genius statement, and we can hit done. And now we'll reinsert our breakaway cable. Now a few things we want to go through on our screen here is I'll hit this little stop sign, And you want to make sure that we are selected at the vacuum because our Jeep does have vacuum brakes. If you were installing this on a different car with non-vacuum brakes, then of course you would switch it over. And then we can go to our drive mode here and hit this, or we can have somebody else hit it and go and look at your brakes, make sure that it's pulling and everything looks good. Now that we got everything synced up, all that's left is to take a test drive, get our settings dialed in. Otherwise, that's going to do it for our look at and installation of the CURT RVi Shadow 2 flat toe braking system on our 2025 Jeep Wrangler.